Revealed, how one new maid's heartwarming invitation transformed a millionaire's 20 years of loneliness. Sophie wiped the final plate dry, her back aching from another long day. The smell of the fading autumn leaves wafted through the window, carrying whispers of change. In Maplewood, the struggle was part of life. Each day was a blend of caring for her ailing mother and juggling 2 jobs. She poured love into her work, knowing every moment was a gift. Deep inside, she clung to her dreams not just for herself but for her mother, who had raised her with grit and grace. Across the street loomed Ethan's mansion. He stood tall, a figure of wealth and success, but beneath the facade was a man trapped in an empty shell. His wealth protected him but isolated him, like a fortress keeping out warmth. Each creak of wood echoed through his vast rooms, a reminder of his estranged family and broken connections. On the surface, he seemed to have it all. Yet, every night he craved something his millions couldn't buy: belonging. One fateful evening, as the first chill kissed the evening air, Sophie's aching heart broke open. She saw him, Ethan, standing alone in his vast yard, staring at the stars with a longing that mirrored her own. She had never spoken to him, but something compelled her. With trembling hands, she approached, an invitation blooming in her chest. "Hi. I'm Sophie. We're having the Maplewood community dinner." She hesitated. "It'd be great if you joined us." His eyes widened, surprise mingling with curiosity. The invitation transformed the evening, igniting a flicker of hope in the darkened corners of their lives. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the dinner approached, a scandal erupted. Ethan's past spilled like ink on pristine paper. Sophie felt her confidence wane. Doubts shadowed her heart as whispers chased her in the dark. Had she opened a door to vulnerability that might lead to judgment instead of acceptance? She could see the community's apprehensive glances in her mind, painting an alternate future where she was ridiculed for asking the stranger in. On the night of the dinner, anticipation crackled in the air. Sophie, dressed in her simple yet hopeful attire, took a deep breath, fighting shadows of insecurity. Just then, a loud knock resounded like thunder in her soul. The moment had arrived. Would Ethan step through, risking his reputation for a taste of genuine companionship? Or would he retreat back into isolation, a phantom in his empty mansion? As Sophie opened the door, an undeniable longing vibrated through the air, 2 worlds colliding, each defined by its struggles and victories. Would they find acceptance in each other, or would judgment drive them apart? The door swung open, a moment for courage, connection, and a question that could unravel the very fabric of their beings. Could they find solace in shared humanity, or would the whispers of the past drown out their chance for a brighter tomorrow? As Sophie opened the door, the evening light cast a warm glow around Ethan. His tall frame was cloaked in an aura of uncertainty, yet his eyes sparkled with a hint of hope. She could see he was torn, standing on the threshold of connection and solitude. For an instant, the world faded away, the bustling noise of Maplewood ceased, replaced by the soft rhythm of their heartbeats. "Hi there," Ethan managed, his voice low, extending a hand that trembled slightly. "Thank you for the invitation." Sophie's heart soared. He had chosen to step closer, to trade his fortress of isolation for the vulnerability of companionship. "I'm glad you came," she said, her voice barely a whisper as she gestured him inside the modest warmth of her home. As they crossed the threshold into the small living room, the scent of homemade pumpkin pie filled the air, mingling with the laughter and chatter that echoed from the kitchen. Friends and neighbors busied themselves, preparing for an evening that promised joy, a joy Ethan had kept at arm's length for years. Sophie introduced him to the others, her voice steady despite the storm of uncertainty swirling within her. Each smile she received reassured her, like gentle hands steering her forward. "This is Ethan," she said proudly, as if revealing a long-lost treasure. "Ethan Miller?" a neighbor exclaimed, incredulous. "What brings you here?" Ethan's cheeks flushed, and he glanced at Sophie, noticing her encouraging nod. "Just looking for a bit of, community," he replied, a hint of hesitation in his tone. Sophie's heart ached for him. She could see the walls he'd built around himself, strong yet fragile. But beneath those layers, his yearning for connection was palpable. As the evening progressed, laughter bubbled around them, weaving the fabric of companionship. She watched as the ice thawed, slowly but surely, around Ethan, and she dared to hope. At one point, while Sophie served pie, she caught a glimpse of Ethan interacting with a small group of neighbors. He shared a story about the time he tried to bake cookies and accidentally mistook salt for sugar. Their laughter rang clear, filling the room with warmth that even the chill outside couldn't touch. Her heart swelled at the realization that this was the man hidden behind the mansion's heavy gates, a man capable of laughter, of vulnerability. Yet, even within this budding connection, a whisper of worry crept back into her thoughts. What would happen when the night ended? Would the real Ethan hold on to this vulnerability, or would it slip away, lost among the ruins of his past? She wanted to believe this night marked a turning point for them both, but the specters of judgment loomed heavy. The community dinner wound down, and as people began to disperse, Ethan lingered longer than the others. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked, a slight tremor in his voice. Sophie nodded, her heart racing but determined. They stepped outside, where the crisp air swirled around them. Underneath a tapestry of stars, she felt the weight of unspoken words hang between them. "Thank you for your kindness," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't remember the last time I felt so normal." Sophie smiled, but beneath her joy swirled uncertainties. It was then she realized their connection was not just fragile, it was ignited by shared vulnerability. "What happens next?" she asked, her eyes searching his for answers. Ethan hesitated, the wind tousling his hair. "I don't know, but I'd like to find out." As he spoke, Sophie's heart thudded in her chest, hope sparking anew. But behind his eager words lay the question looming above them both: could they truly bridge the gap between their worlds, or was this fleeting moment just another whisper lost in the night? With a determination swelling inside her, Sophie realized they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. That evening had opened a gate, but would they be brave enough to step through it together? The night air clung around them, heavy with anticipation and unspoken possibilities. Ethan searched Sophie's eyes, the stars above twinkling like hope in their depths. He didn't want to retreat to his fortress, not after feeling the warmth of laughter and connection, but the path ahead was uncharted. "I want to know more about you," he murmured, the shadows playing across his features. It was a simple request, yet it felt like a bold step into the unknown. Sophie nodded, her heart racing at the idea that she could peel back the layers of his guarded soul. "Okay," she said softly, feeling a smile grow on her face. "What do you want to know?" Ethan took a breath, grounding himself. "Tell me about your life here in Maplewood. What makes you stay?" Sophie leaned against the wooden railing of her porch, grateful for the moment. "It's home," she replied, breathing in the familiar scent of pine and the faint floral notes of her garden. "My family has lived here for generations. There's something about the community, the festivals, the traditions that makes me feel connected." The light from the window behind them flickered, casting soft shadows. Ethan looked thoughtful, his brow furrowed as if he were unearthing long-buried memories. "I can't imagine that kind of closeness," he admitted, his voice a mixture of envy and sadness. "I've always felt so alone, stuck behind the walls of my own making." Sophie thought about his mansion, the opulence that surrounded him, and the emptiness it must have held. "You're not alone anymore, Ethan," she said gently, reaching out to place a hand on his arm. Not if you don't want to be. His gaze lingered on her touch for a moment before meeting her eyes. How do I break down those walls? He asked, vulnerability carved into the lines of his face. Start small, she suggested. Take one step at a time. A soft chuckle emerged from Ethan. I can't even bake a cookie without messing it up. What makes you think I can break down walls? It's not about baking, Sophie replied, her voice playful yet sincere. It's about trying, even if you stumble. Just like tonight you took a huge step by coming here. Their laughter mingled in the night, lightening the weight between them. For a moment, the heaviness of his past seemed to lift. What if Ethan paused, his brow furrowing as if grappling with something deep? What if I fail again? What if I go back to being me? Sophie's heart ached for him, truly understanding that fear. If you stumble, I'll be right there with you to help you back up, she promised, the sincerity in her voice echoing like an open invitation to a real partnership. Ethan took a moment to absorb her words. You really mean that? Absolutely, she affirmed. We're all just trying to find our place. Your past doesn't have to define where you're going, you know? A silence stretched between them, filled with an unspoken pact. Sophie could see Ethan weighing her promise against the scars of his past. Then I'd like to try, he said finally, his voice steadier now. Will you help me? Every step of the way, Sophie replied, her breath catching in her throat as warmth blossomed in her chest. Suddenly, from inside, laughter erupted, a reminder of their friends still celebrating the evening. The sound spilled outside, bringing them back to the present. Sophie offered him a smile, her mind racing with possibilities. They were only at the beginning of this journey. Ethan stepped a fraction closer, a new light in his eyes. Can we start now? Can we just hang out? Yes. Sophie laughed, feeling a connection quicken between them like a pulse. Let us join everyone. As they turned to move back inside, Sophie glanced up at Ethan's face, illuminated in the glow of the porch light. Her heart swelled with hope and excitement. She could see it, the first real thread connecting their disparate lives. Yet beneath that joy, a worry lingered. What if their worlds clashed harder than they could bond? What if this fragile thread snapped before they could truly explore where it might lead? Wait, Sophie said suddenly, spinning back to him. What if you find it hard to step back into the light? Ethan looked at her intently, determination mixed with fear dancing in his gaze. I guess we'll find out together, won't we? And with that, they stepped toward the laughter, leaving their uncertainties hanging in the air, both knowing the real test was just beginning. Inside the house, the vibrant energy enveloped them like a warm blanket. Laughter rang out, mingled with the scent of delicious food. Sophie felt a rush of nerves, temperature rising, palms sweating, yet there was an undeniable thrill coursing through her. She glanced at Ethan, who seemed momentarily lost, his eyes scanning the lively scene. Do you dance? She asked, trying to coax him back from wherever his thoughts had wandered. Ethan shook his head, a faint smile breaking through his earlier concerns. Not unless you count awkward swaying as dancing. Perfect. Awkward is my specialty. She teased, pulling him toward the heart of the gathering. As they entered the living room, several friends greeted them, the familiar faces all lit up with joy and curiosity. Conversations leaped around them, and music played softly in the background, weaving a comforting atmosphere. Look who finally decided to join us, called out Mia, their friend with a flair for the dramatic. Ethan, you're just in time. We were about to start a game. Sophie felt Ethan tense beside her. She squeezed his hand subtly, a reminder that he was no longer alone. In no time, they were gathered on the floor, surrounded by friends, laughter bubbling up to the ceiling. The game started simply enough, but as it progressed, the stakes rose. Stories were shared, truths revealed, some light-hearted, others striking different chords of vulnerability. Sophie watched Ethan as he engaged reluctantly, but he was present, and for now, that was enough. "All right, Ethan," Mia said, her eyes shining with mischief. "Truth or dare?" Ethan's hesitance was palpable. Sophie sensed a struggle inside him, between stepping out of his comfort zone and his instinct to withdraw. Truth," he finally mumbled, casting a quick glance at Sophie. Mia grinned widely. "What's your biggest fear?" A hush fell over the group. Sophie held her breath, hoping this wouldn't push him too far. Ethan's expression shifted, shadows flitted across his face like clouds before a storm. He took a moment, collecting his thoughts. "I guess it's being vulnerable," he admitted, his voice low but steady. "Letting people in." The admission hung heavily in the air, raw and real. Sophie's heart ached for him, but a flicker of hope ignited in her chest. He had just taken a step, a small crack in the walls he built around himself. "Thanks for sharing that," Sophie said softly, her eyes locking onto his. "And just so you know, it's okay to be scared. It doesn't mean you can't try." Ethan nodded, a warmth growing in his gaze, and he almost smiled. It was a start. As the night wore on, they moved from game to game, laughter flowing freely. Sophie could see a lightness in Ethan, a gradual ebb to his tension. The friends around them felt like a safety net, laughter swirling as a connection filled the gaps in his armor. Later, while everyone prepared snacks, Ethan leaned closer to Sophie, his voice lowered to a whisper. "How are you so fearless?" She laughed, shaking her head. "Fearless? Hardly. I just think life's too short to let fear win. We can either hold on to it or let it push us towards something beautiful." Ethan contemplated her words, his brow furrowed deep in thought. Sophie took a deep breath, urgency threading through her. "Ethan, do you really want to change? To break the walls down for good?" In that moment, their eyes locked, an unspoken understanding passing between them, heavy with potential. He studied her face, the hope she carried. "I do. I just don't know how." A wave of warmth washed over her. "Then let us figure it out together." Just then, a burst of fireworks lit up the sky outside, bright colors exploding as they illuminated their faces. The group rushed to the windows, caught in the spectacle. "This is beautiful," Sophie exclaimed, her heart racing. She turned to Ethan, eyes sparkling with excitement. But as he looked at the display, his expression shifted. Something stirred in his eyes, a flicker of panic that Sophie couldn't ignore. He took a step back, shaking his head. "Ethan?" she called, concern creeping into her voice. And just like that, his walls threatened to rise again. Had the budding connection already been put to the test? With uncertainty hanging in the air, Sophie reached out a hand, desperate to keep him from retreating. "Don't shut me out, please." The moment froze as they both stood on the precipice of something life-changing, each taking a breath as the fireworks faded, not knowing if they were prepared for what came next. Would he step forward or pull back? The question lingered, heavy with consequence, as hearts raced and the night air buzzed with the remnants of hope. The fireworks faded, leaving in their wake a thick silence that seemed to linger in the air. Sophie stood there, her heart pounding in her chest, each beat echoing the uncertainty of the moment. Ethan's eyes darted away, unable to hold her gaze. She feared the familiar shadow starting to creep back across his features, the very shadow they had been trying to leave behind. "Ethan," she said again, her voice now more a gentle plea than a question. "Please don't go back inside your head. I'm right here." He took a shaky breath, eyes still focused on the ground. "It's just I thought I could handle this," he replied, his voice trembling slightly. "But with everyone looking and the noise, it's overwhelming." Sophie felt a knot of worry tighten in her stomach. It's okay to be overwhelmed. Being vulnerable doesn't mean you have to face everything at once. She took a small step closer, drawn by a fierce urge to bridge the distance he seemed to create around himself. "We can leave if you want. Just say the word." His gaze remained downcast, but Sophie noticed how his fingers twitched, a small tell that he was wrestling with a decision. The air filled with soft background chatter and muffled laughter, a comforting reminder that they were surrounded by friends who cared. Yet in that moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the world. "I don't want to be that guy, Sophie," Ethan finally said, his voice soft, shaking with frustration. "The one who can't enjoy life like everyone else." "You're not that guy, Ethan," she assured him, her heart aching for the pain he expressed. "You're brave. You faced your fear tonight when you shared what you did. That isn't weakness, it's strength." He looked up then, the warmth of her words lighting something within him. "You really think so?" "I know so. It takes courage to even start," she replied. For a moment, a flicker of hope lit his eyes. But then, just as quickly, shadows began to stretch across his face again. "But what if it's too much? I don't want to burden you with my issues." Sophie shook her head, determination crashing over her like a wave. "We're friends, Ethan. That means we walk through the messy parts of life together. Trust me, your struggles don't define you. You are so much more than what has been holding you back." As she spoke, she watched his defenses crack further. Something about her unwavering belief in him seemed to penetrate the armor he'd woven so tightly around himself. "Maybe I've just never had someone really see me, you know," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm right here, remember?" "I see you," Sophie replied gently. "And right now, it's okay to feel what you feel. You don't have to pretend around me. Can I really do this? Can I step out of my comfort zone and not fall apart?" "Yes, you can. And you won't fall apart. I'll be with you." Ethan nodded slowly, uncertainty replaced by a flickering flame of determination. With newfound boldness, he inhaled deeply, seemed to stand taller, and surprised Sophie by taking her hand firm and steady. "Then how about we step outside together?" he suggested, eyes shining with a cautious hope. "Yes. Let us." Sophie's heart soared. Finally, a tangible connection was forming, a bridge breaking through the walls he'd so carefully erected. As they moved away from the crowd and out onto the patio, a gentle breeze kissed their faces, filling the space between them with possibility. The soft glow of the moon bathed everything in silver, and for the first time that night, Sophie felt they were sharing more than just a moment. They were entering something deeper together. But as they stood just within earshot of the festivities, a loud commotion erupted from the house. Cheerful voices turned into startled gasps. Sophie's excitement twisted into confusion. "What's happening in there?" Ethan shrugged, but his expression said it all, a blend of curiosity and apprehension. Just when things began to feel right, a wave of unexpected chaos might derail their fragile moment. Together, they lingered at the threshold, the thrill of adventure mixed with uncertainty. Would they explore the source of the interruption, or would they remain in their safe bubble, daring to hope for more? Each heartbeat echoed in the silence as the question hung in the air: what awaited them on the other side? A moment of hesitation hung thick in the air, and Sophie felt her heart race again, but this time fueled by a mix of urgency and curiosity. She turned to Ethan, his face awash with uncertainty but alive with a flicker of courage. "What do you think? Should we check it out?" His brows knit together as he weighed her question. After a long pause, he breathed out, "As long as you're with me, I guess I'm willing to see what's going on." Sophie smiled, a rush of warmth flooding her chest. She gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. "Together, right?" Stepping away from the safety of the moonlit patio, they headed toward the front door. As they crossed the threshold, the sounds morphed into a cacophony of excitement, shouts, laughter, and the unmistakable sound of something breaking. Her heart quickened. What could it be? Inside, the room felt a little frenzied. Guests filled the living room, their faces lit with excitement as they crowded around the source of the commotion. But all Sophie and Ethan could see was the dramatic scene unfolding near the snack table. A platter loaded with chips had met its unfortunate end, sending a cascade of snacks spiraling across the floor. Amidst the chaotic laughter, Sophie could see Jenna, their mutual friend, bent over while trying to scoop up the scattered chips, her cheeks flushed with merriment. "Sorry, everyone. I guess I'm not cut out for party planning," she exclaimed, her laughter infectious. Ethan chuckled and Sophie felt the tension in his shoulders ease as Jenna straightened up, surprisingly unfazed by her small disaster. "See? Not everything has to be perfect," Sophie whispered to Ethan, echoing the very truth they'd been discussing moments ago. "It's okay to just be real." Ethan nodded, watching their friends burst into laughter at Jenna's expense. For the first time, the chaos didn't feel overwhelming, it seemed freeing. Their little circle of friends had found joy in the mess, and Sophie turned to see Ethan's face brightening, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. Was there a hint of relief in his eyes? Ready to join them? She asked, her own excitement bubbling. "Let us do it," he said. With a newfound sense of determination, he stepped deeper into the bustling crowd with her at his side. Jenna spotted them and gestured with a handful of chips. "You two should try and help. It's practically a disaster zone. Come on." Within moments, they found themselves scooping chips back onto the platter, laughter erupting around them. The energy was contagious, and with each chuckle, Sophie noticed the shadows that had lingered around Ethan begin to lift. For every mischievous comment tossed around, he responded with a lightness she had longed to see. Sophie felt elation dance through her veins. Maybe this wasn't just about stepping out of the comfort zone, it was about embracing the imperfections together, finding joy in the mess of life. As the laughter faded into softer murmurs and they crowded closer together, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that something pivotal was happening. "Ethan," she said softly, leaning in a fraction closer. "What do you think about all this?" He paused, taking in the jubilant chaos, and shrugged in a nonchalant way. "I think this might not be so bad after all." Just as she opened her mouth to respond, someone called out from behind them. "Hey, you two! When are you going to tell us what is going on between you?" The laughter froze momentarily before cascading back, now mixed with teasing catcalls. Sophie felt herself flush, a rush of warmth flooding her cheeks. She shot a glance at Ethan, and his expression mirrored hers, a mixture of surprise and something deeper. Could they really confront that question, among friends who had been their safe harbor, just as they had been facing their storms? The air felt electric with expectancy. Sophie squeezed Ethan's hand tighter, her heart racing not just from the situation but from a new realization. Was this the moment they could finally share their truth? Or would the fear of vulnerability hold them back once again, leaving questions unanswered in the joy of the evening? The answer hung in the air, waiting to be discovered. Would they take the leap? Sophie felt breathless as the room buzzed around them, laughter ringing out in waves that crashed over her insecurity. Ethan looked down, his brow furrowing slightly as if weighing his next words against a tightrope of uncertainty. The query from the back of the room had pulled them into the spotlight. The moment felt both exhilarating and terrifying. "Come on, just tell us." Jenna's voice rang out again, this time more forward, nudging the group closer to their conversation. The collective laughter faded, replaced by a collective, eager anticipation. It seemed everyone was leaning a little closer, waiting for something pivotal to unfold. Sophie's heart pounded, uncertainty clawing at her. Taking a deep breath, she glanced up at Ethan, searching his eyes for guidance. There was a flicker of something hope, perhaps in his gaze, that anchored her. If they were going to step into the light, they might as well do it together. Ethan cleared his throat, as if the weight of unspoken words hung intensely in the air. His hands fidgeted slightly, squeezing Sophie's tighter. Well, we've been spending more time together recently," he began, voice steady. "And I guess it's deeper than just friends." Warmth began to flood her cheeks again. Sophie could feel the way her heart softened at the words. This was it. They were stepping closer to the truth. Yes. Exactly. Sophie jumped in, her excitement bubbling to the surface. We've been figuring things out. Her words felt inadequate but vibrant, flush with the emotion she wanted to convey. It's been different in a good way. A wave of sounds erupted as the group processed their admission. Light cheers mixed with playful hoots, encouraging them as if they'd just declared a victory at a game. What do you mean by different? Jenna grinned cheekily, clearly relishing this new layer of entertainment. Not every story needs a big reveal, Ethan said, a glint of mischief dancing in his eyes. Sophie felt an overwhelming urge to burst into laughter, the kind of hysterical laugh that might leave her breathless. But sometimes, he continued, it just feels right to let it be known. Fess up. Another friend yelled from the back. Are you guys, like, dating or something? More teasing erupted, and Ethan glanced sideways at Sophie. His expression was playful, yet there was an intimacy in the way he looked at her. A moment passed, tension mingling with the laughter that swirled around them. Maybe, Sophie responded, her smile wide and genuine, we have been exploring that option. But we're still figuring it out. The crowd roared again, enveloping them in warm encouragement. Sophie felt suspended in a rush of joy, the kind that almost spilled over into tears. She sensed Ethan relaxing a little more beside her, and it sent a thrill through her. Good luck, you two. Just remember, there's no rush. They shouted, laughter mixing with good-natured teasing. As the moment unfolded, Sophie felt the energy in the room shift, the atmosphere clearer and brighter. This was not just about confronting their feelings, it was about embracing the journey together. But just as everything seemed to settle into an exhilarating equilibrium, the front door swung open, and a new presence charged into the room. The raucous laughter faded as familiar faces turned toward the sudden intrusion. Sophie. Ethan. A loud voice rang out, filled with urgency and disbelief. You're not going to believe what happened while we were out. The air turned electric again, excitement brewing fresh. Sophie's pulse quickened once more, their moment of vulnerability disrupted but now tinged with curiosity. As she caught Ethan's eye, a new question loomed large between them. What did this unexpected arrival have to say? What revelation could potentially change everything they'd just begun to understand? The room remained charged with a mixture of confusion and anticipation. The newcomer, Katie, breathless from her hurried entrance, paused for dramatic effect, her eyes darting between the crowd and Sophie and Ethan. Sophie tried to read her face, but the expressions flickering across it were a swirl of excitement and something else, something darker. You're never going to guess who we ran into. Katie nearly shouted, the gravity of her announcement sending a ripple through the group. The chatter quieted, all eyes now locked on her. The festive vibe of playful teasing hovered like a bubble, waiting to pop. Who? Sophie asked, her heart thrumming with a mix of dread and excitement. Was this about the revelation? Or something that could disrupt the fragile joy they had just built? Jared, Katie exclaimed, drawing out the name as if it alone held the power to ignite any number of reactions. A collective gasp echoed around the room, followed by whispers the name carried familiar weight, a ghost from the past they'd all thought was gone for good. Sophie glanced over at Ethan, who clenched his jaw, his playful demeanor fading into something serious. Memories of Jared washed over her, a boy she once dated in high school, someone who had always been charming yet reckless, a bit of a wild card. Ethan's expression spoke volumes, it was clear he had memories too. What was he doing here? Sophie managed to ask, her curiosity struggling to break free from deeper feelings that threatened to pull her under. The warmth Bruce had stirred was now quickly cooling. He said he was back in town for a while. I think he's changed, but I could feel something wasn't he right. Katie's voice lowered as she continued. He was looking for you, Sophie. Said he wanted to talk. A wave of unease washed over Sophie as she processed the words. Jared wanting to talk. The implications were heavy, and her stomach twisted. Was she ready to face him after all this time? Why would he want to talk to her? Ethan's protective tone jutted out, a challenge as he instinctively stepped closer to Sophie. There was heat in his voice, but she sensed something more beneath it, a stranglehold of insecurity. Could their moment of openness unravel so quickly just because of a name? I don't know, Katie responded, her eyes widening slightly as she sensed the shift. But he seemed serious. Maybe this is a chance to clear the air. Or maybe he's just looking to stir up trouble again. You know how he is. Sophie's mind was spinning, caught between the past she had left behind and the uncertain future she had just begun to explore with Ethan. She inhaled slowly, her thoughts tangled. Do you want me to talk to him? Katie offered gently, attempting to bridge the tension that had risen. Sophie felt Ethan's hand slip away from hers, and she looked up to see his expression hardening. No. That's something she needs to decide for herself. His voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent of something deep and painful. Emotion warred inside of Sophie. This was supposed to be about them, about stepping forward together, yet here was an unexpected test, one that could redefine everything. I need to think about it, she finally said quietly, her heart heavy. As the atmosphere shifted, Sophie caught sight of the anticipation in the group still hanging in the air. Everyone was waiting, leaning in, curious to see how this would unfold. Her own friends were just as invested, ready to support her every step, but that only added more weight to her dilemma. Ethan's gaze bore into hers, searching, questioning. The door had swung wide open, revealing shadows from the past. Would she step through it, or would she choose the brightness that had just flickered into existence? The moment felt as raw and electric as an uncovered line. What would she do? What was right? And why did she suddenly feel so lost again, just as they had seemed to find a glimmer of connection? The uncertainty loomed between them like a thick fog. As the laughter began to bubble back up from the crowd, cloaked in their own excitement, Sophie realized that the real question hung heavier than any she had faced before. What path would she choose when the past called her name? The moment felt stretching and fragile, like a thin thread threatened by a sudden gust of wind. Sophie could feel the weight of every gaze in the room, penetrating and curious, as she stood at the crossroads of her own heart. Stepping away from the group, she needed air, a breath far away from the bubbling laughter and whispers. The night had been about celebration, a gathering of old friends, but now it was overloaded with possibility and peril. Hey, where are you going? Ethan called softly, his voice a mixture of concern and confusion. He didn't follow her right away, but she could hear his footsteps echo somewhere behind her, readiness clinging to him like a second skin. Sophie walked outside, the cool night air hitting her like a splash of water. She leaned against the railing of the porch, staring out into the moonlit yard, where shadows danced among the trees. What did Jared want? The thought lingered like a bitter aftertaste. He had been fun, chaotic, a thrill when she was young and careless. But then, like a storm that eventually breaks, he had left debris in his wake that she was still learning to navigate. The door creaked, and Ethan stepped outside, his silhouette catching the glow from the inside. He hesitated, studying her, the tension between them as lax as a drawn bow. What are you doing, Soph? He finally asked, his tone softer now, careful like he was walking on fragile ground. I'm thinking, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. About Jared? She nodded, staring off into the distance as memories tangled with her current reality. It's just. I don't know what he wants, and I'm not sure if I'm ready to hear it. I thought I had moved on. I get it, Ethan said, pushing off the door frame to step closer. But facing things from the past is part of moving forward, too. Just do it on your own terms. You don't have to jump back in. His words softened her resolve, each syllable seeping into her like a balm on a fresh wound. She turned to look at him, seeking reassurance in his eyes, and found it. But there was a shadow lurking, a persistent glance toward uncertainty. Something about this moment felt even more fragile now. What if I open that door and it just brings back everything bad? What if he is still the old Jared? She questioned, anxiety knotting her stomach. And what if it changes what we have? Ethan took a breath, glancing away for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts. You're stronger than that. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together. Together, she echoed, though doubt still clung to her heart. It felt nice to imagine facing the past hand in hand, but what did her history really mean for the future? Ethan reached out, taking her hand in his, warm and steady. Just promise me you won't close the door on what we've started here. Not because of someone who might only bring chaos. You deserve more than that. Sophie felt a swell of emotion, her heart racing not from fear, but from the intensity of the moment, the uncertainty growing inside her. Was she willing to risk everything she and Ethan had started over unanswered questions about Jared? I'll try, she replied, searching his face for some sign of what they both were feeling. But before he could respond, the door swung open again. Katie appeared, her expression brightening momentarily before it fell to concern. Sorry to interrupt, she said breathlessly. But I think you should know it looks like Jared's here. He just pulled up. Sophie's heart dropped, but then surged. The past had finally come knocking, and she stood frozen, wondering if she would open the door to face it or slam it shut for good. As the chill of uncertainty gripped her anew, a question lingered: would she welcome the ghost of a memory or stand firm in her newfound light? The world around Sophie blurred as her heart raced. Jared's arrival twisted the night into something dark and unfamiliar. Standing on the porch, with Ethan's hand clasping hers, the weight of uncertainty pulled at the edges of her mind. The laughter, the warmth, the comfort of connection felt 1,000 miles away. She turned to Ethan, searching his eyes for answers, for strength. I don't know if I can handle this, she admitted, her voice trembling. The emotions swirled within her like a storm ready to break. You don't have to face him alone, Ethan reassured her, his grip tightening, solid and unwavering. Just remember what you have now and don't let him define you. Sophie nodded, inhaling deeply to steady herself. The moment's tension cracked under the weight of his words, but it still felt like the storm was brewing. She peeked inside, where friends huddled, blissfully unaware. Jared standing in the doorway would change everything, and she was terrified it would be for the worse. The cool night air was filled with questions hanging just out of reach. Was she truly ready to confront the past? Maybe I don't have to see him right now, Sophie suggested, her mind spinning with thoughts of safety and uncertainty. Maybe I can just keep moving forward? But that eluding answer dangled like a mirage, just out of reach. Ethan's gentle gaze bore into her soul. Sophie, it's okay to be scared. Embracing change is about facing your fears, not ignoring them. His words began to melt the ice around her heart. A small glimmer of courage sparked within her, and suddenly she knew what she had to do. Facing Jared was not a backward step, it would solidify everything she had built with Ethan and the newfound connections flourishing within her community. I need to talk to him, she finally said, half whispering, half asserting her resolve. I can't let him linger in the shadows anymore. It's time to take charge of my past. Ethan's smile released the tension between them, transforming the worry into pride. You're stronger than you think, you know. I believe in you. With a rush of determination, Sophie stepped away from Ethan, heartened by his unwavering support. Together, they walked back inside the house, the laughter growing louder, enveloping her like an embrace. She could feel the warmth of her friends and the pulse of joy, mingling with her nervous energy. As she stood at the threshold facing the room, Jared's presence loomed across the space. Memories rushed back, but this time, she wouldn't flinch. She stepped further in, heart pounding but emboldened by the community around her, ready to step into the light. Jared stood casually, his expression shifting the instant he spotted her eyes widening slightly, mouth parting with surprise. The crowd's laughter faded, anticipation thick in the air. "Hey, Soph," he said, his tone weaving through the tension like a breeze over calm waters. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Really? I thought you might enjoy a reunion," she replied, her voice steady. There was no wavering, no second-guessing. This was her moment. His gaze narrowed, trying to gauge her strength. "Look, I just wanted to talk. There are some things we need to clear up." "Talk?" She cut him off, her heart pounding fiercely, refusing to let him dominate this moment. "You've had years to talk, Jared. What makes you think I want to listen now?" The challenge in her voice echoed in the air, hanging there like the scent of autumn leaves. The room buzzed with anticipation, eyes darting between them. She could feel Ethan behind her, a rock the catalyst urging her forward. Jared took a breath, the bravado slipping as uncertainty swept over him. "I messed up, I know that. I changed, I want you to know I'm different." Her heart clenched at the familiar response. The feelings of the past rushed in like a tide threatening to pull her under. "You think showing up makes everything better? It doesn't work that way." "You hurt me, Jared," she said, every word laced with the weight of her history. "You left chaos in your wake." Sophie watched as he shifted. Uncomfortably, the bravado crumbling. She wasn't just speaking for herself, she was also voicing years of pain that still lingered. "I know. I messed up, but I've done a lot of thinking," he added, searching her face for something hope, perhaps. "And I want to fix things, to apologize." "Why do you choose tonight?" Sophie felt heat rising within her. "What do you want from me? Do you just want to open wounds that I've been trying to heal?" There was a pause, tension hanging palpably in the air. Finally, Jared sighed deeply, vulnerability breaking through the facade. "I just wanted to talk, not to hurt you again. I knew it was risky, but I couldn't leave without saying something." The honesty in his eyes caught her off guard, and with it, the dam of emotion cracked further. Ethan shifted beside her, his presence a reminder that she wasn't alone amid the chaos of her past. He leaned in, voice low but firm. "You don't owe him anything. You've come so far, Sophie. Choose your path." The fire inside her flared a mixture of rage, pain, and an awakening resolve. "I choose myself," she said, feeling the weight of those words solidify her stance. Looking back at Jared, she added, "I appreciate your honesty, but this isn't about you anymore. I'm moving forward, not back." With that, she turned away, walking towards Ethan, feeling the warmth and support radiate from him. Laughter erupted from their friends again, an embrace that felt like freedom. Jared stood silently, watching as the past faded into the background, melding into a memory that no longer held power over her. Sophie glanced back at him once more, serene yet assertive. "I hope you find what you're looking for, but it won't be here." Ethan reached for her hand, their fingers entwining effortlessly as they turned back toward the group. The uncertainty was still there, but what once seemed daunting now felt manageable in the light of newfound connection. As Sophie stepped into the warmth of laughter and camaraderie that evening, she knew the threshold she had crossed tonight wasn't merely about facing the ghosts of the past, but embracing the beautiful incarnation of hope and love unfolding before them. Facing the unexpected, she had braved the storm. And she decided to stay together, stronger than ever. Sophie's heart swelled with joy, the shadows behind her fading into the night. She had chosen connection over fear, clarity over chaos. The laughter of her community enveloped them as she found her place next to Ethan, the beginnings of a future glowing before them. This is the moment. Don't wait not even one more second. Subscribe immediately to the channel, so you never miss these exclusive stories. Leave a like right now to feed the algorithm and comment your reactions about this emotional journey. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to show your support today.